Hey, welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today. Focus all that energy on the stories that have been impacting the tech world over the last 7 days or so. I'm your host, Jim Lauterbach. I'm super psyched about the people we've got here today. First of all, Rafe Needleman, who's Director of Developer Relations at Evernote, but his background is he's like editor-in-chief of Byte magazine. You were at corporate computing, CNET. I mean, I've been on his show when he was at CNET, so I'm psyched to have him on this one.
The worm turns.
Yes, the worm turns. Rafe, thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
It's good to see you. And Dylan Tweney, who's executive editor of VentureBeat. Dylan and I also have a long history working together at PC Magazine, and when he was at PC Computing, I was at PC Week. Anyway, it's great to have you here too.
It's good to be here.
It's kind of, you know, we got really smart people sitting on that couch right there, so we're going to get right to the first story, which is actually a media story all about the latest shiny bauble for big execs these days, Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post. This is pretty wild. So you're actually still a journalist, Dylan. Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post. What does it mean?
My goodness, it caught us all by surprise, I think. Nobody had any idea that this was going to happen to the Post. What does it mean? I don't know. There's a lot of people out there who are saying, you know, there was sort of the initial angst, like, oh my God, the Post, this bastion of real serious journalism, has been sold finally to some internet guy. And there are a whole bunch of people who think that, well, this internet guy actually kind of knows what he's doing with the internet, right? I mean, Amazon's been incredibly successful. He's willing to pony up $250 million to buy the Post, and presumably he's going to put some more money into it to keep it afloat over the coming years. The truth is, though, I'm a little divided. I'm not sure. I mean, he is very smart, and he must have a good reason for this, other than just he likes the newspaper.
Yeah, Rafe, what's your take on this? I mean, this is a company that actually spent a bunch of money on internet firms, right? They bought the development group at Dig. They bought a bunch of other stuff. Is there more there than just the print?
Oh my goodness, yes. But the thing about this that is really interesting is this is not Amazon buying the Post. This is Jeff Bezos buying the Post.
Right.
And that, I think, is the whole...
So explore that for me for a minute.
Well, for Amazon to buy the Post, it would be, okay, we're going to buy a content creator and we're going to make money off this content by selling it on Kindles, et cetera. And you know, one of the crackpot theories was maybe we'll use the delivery trucks to understand how to do same-day delivery, because there's one thing that the print newspaper industry knows, it's same-day delivery. But that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Bezos buying the Post. Now, newspapers and good literary magazines have a long storied history of patronage, of running as a patronage model. Here, I believe...
Patronage meaning we're going to lose money on this.
But we're doing it because
for good reasons.
Because I believe that it is a public trust, and I want to do the right thing, or it's really, really cool and I want to mess around. Remember, Bezos also has money invested in space travel. So here's a guy who's experimenting with new ways to do interesting things that could benefit mankind.
So the first intergalactic newspaper, the Washington Post. Yes. Dylan, go ahead. You had something to say.
Well, I think patronage is a really good word, because that's exactly what it is. It's the rich guy sponsoring the thing that he thinks is valuable. And for generations it's been happening, right? I mean, you know, Cy Newhouse owning Condé Nast and the New Yorker is the same kind of thing. It's like at the Billionaires Club, it's really cool if you own a newspaper or a high class magazine, right? And he probably truly believes in the values. The question is, though, when you have a patron, like, that something is going to come due eventually, right? He's going to want something for that.
I didn't say they lost $50 million last year. I mean, it's hard.
The model is played out. Here's a guy who has a history of upending traditional industry and making it work. So Bezos, maybe he can figure out how to make journalism work again. Maybe he can't. He's going to learn a lot regardless. In the meantime, he gets insight into the way journalists think. And now, the thing that scares me the most, can I just go into
go ahead,
this,
please.
Is in the early days of Amazon, the company hired a bunch of writers to work on book reviews and make recommendations. And it was cool. It was a bunch of journalists, a lot of journalists, not all, but a lot of journalists. And then Amazon started to mess around with automated recommendations and crowdsourcing and all that, and those guys all kind of found themselves less relevant. So just, you know, my doomsday scenario is that all these great journalists who have, you know, used their experience and their contacts and all this great human brain power to create journalism will find themselves replaced by machines.
Yeah.
I don't think we're all going to get replaced with algorithms.
I sure hope not.
It doesn't seem like
Okay, so that's one theory. Let's explore a couple of others. How about this, Dylan? Did he do it for influence? Does he want influence? Because this is the newspaper of Washington, D.C., where our government supposedly is.
There's certainly some of that. I mean, he gets some cachet and he gets some entree into Washington society, I suppose. Like, he's got a whole newspaper organization. Every time he goes to D.C., he now has a bunch of employees and friends who can introduce him to the right people. But it's not like he had any difficulty getting that entree already. And I have to think
who's not going to take a meeting with the CEO of Amazon?
Right. And he's not so stupid that he would, push the paper to, compromise itself to serve his ends. I don't think he's going to do that.
All right, well, Rafe, let's try this one out. How about he's running for office? He wants to be president, and this is his way to do that.
Oh my, why would he want to be president?
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
It worked for Bloomberg, so maybe it would work for
exactly.
For Bezos. No, I think this would be kind of a money pit. I mean, he's going to learn a lot. I think this is tuition.
Yeah,
I think
this is tuition.
This is tuition.
He's going to the University of Graham.
Exactly. He's going to learn how media and news and readership works in the journalism world. So, and that's valuable.
So you guys don't think there's a secret master plan here for some, like, he's going to be taking over? I mean, except for the fact that computers are going to replace us all.
So, I mean, he is pretty high on the list of potential real-world Bond villains, right? Yeah. I mean, he's got the spaceship company, he's got the secret clock hidden in a mountain.
What?
He's got this big clock that he's building that's going to run for 10,000 years.
He's doing the Long Now project?
Yes, he is.
Awesome.
He bought a personal clock that will run for 10,000 years.
But he's got his own personal bedside 10,000-year clock.
Well, except
the clock of the Long Now?
It's hidden in a mountain in Texas somewhere.
Cool.
So, in a secret location.
Awesome.
And so, I mean, he is a little bit, like, maybe he does have an evil plan. But realistically, I mean, he even said in his letter to the employees of the Post, like, I don't really know what I'm doing with this yet. We don't really know. So I think he's got an open mind.
Look, the guy's worth, what, $25 billion? And he spent, which is not a lot of money if you think for a major media company, $250 million. So it's not, was that 1%? That's my math.
Yeah.
Of his net worth? That's
it's also
really
like
sad.
5 times what the Globe sold for.
Well, let's talk about the Globe, which is another newspaper that was sold to the guy who owns the Red Sox.
Now that one may be motivated by influence because didn't he fire the baseball columnist?
Did he? Did that happen? I didn't see. Did that happen?
That's true or not, but yeah, that's.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's like, oh yeah, I've been covering your baseball team and saying things about it that probably aren't that positive, and suddenly you're my boss. I think this is another example of, as I think you let off, Dylan, it's just kind of one of those shiny trophies that you put on the shelf. The guy who bought the Globe, owns the Red Sox, put it on the shelf.
I don't think that Amazon bought, that Bezos bought the Post as a trophy.
Yeah.
I really don't believe that to be the case. There are many newspapers have been bought that way for influence or trophy value. I think it's much more interesting than that.
Look, you lived in Boston.
Yeah, briefly.
I've lived in Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Globe. I thought it was a great paper. The Times bought it for over $1 billion, right? 1.1 billion or something like that.
Yeah, that was.
And
the
paper has just gone like this. Unfortunately, the Globe is like there's not much left to it. So
now that is a paper that has a really interesting website, though.
Right.
Their site is really
Boston.com is great.
Boston.com is good, and their big picture thing where they do the series of giant photos from the AP. That's beautiful.
I think Boston.com is one of the leaders of newspaper websites. So there's that there. $75 million for that. We'll see. I just hope they make the paper better.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to love the comics.
Why do we say paper? Can we just say, let's hope they make their journalism better?
Right. Okay, let's hope they make their journalism better. All right, we're going to move on to our next story, which is also somewhat journalism related and has to do with influence and technology and connections and politicians. Seems like the New York Times actually discovered that Cory Booker did a tech startup called Waywire. Go ahead, Rafe.
All right, I was reading this story. First of all, I'd never heard of Waywire until I looked into this, did the prep on this story, and it's like, as a guy who reviewed 2,000 startups, it's an unimpressive startup, if I can say that.
They were making the circuit of South by Southwest this year, by the way. That's where I first heard of Waywire. Yeah. They had Cory Booker, and they were using him, trotting him out everywhere, kind of he was speaking, and they were introducing Waywire and so forth. I think actually Waywire is almost beside the point. It's a tiny startup. It doesn't seem to be doing very well at all.
But what got me was reading the story, and somewhere in the story is this line about Booker being named co-founder of Waywire. And that turn of phrase, I mean, either you co-founded something or you didn't. I mean, you're not named co-founder. Well, it's not an honorary title.
Actually, okay, so it's two things. One, our CTO here, Rob DeMillo, was at a mobile startup, and he didn't start it up, but his CTO came in there and he was named the co-founder of it. So he was. You can become a co-founder of something after it. You know, if you're there.
It's pretty obvious that this is name only, though. I mean, he's not really there in the trenches starting.
I will disagree with you because we know about Waywire here. One of the guys who was worked for the Collective, an agency and an MCN down in LA, Max Benader, who went to go and was on the launch team of Waywire. Max now does work for us, by the way, just in full disclosure. But he was on the launch team of Waywire. We did a deal with Waywire early on. And you know, CORY was very involved. I mean, Max was telling me, we were talking a week ago, and he said, you know, he and CORY would talk every day. And he moved to New York to do Waywire. And one of the reasons why we got involved in Waywire. So I do think CORY was involved in it a lot.
So in between, like, rescuing babies from burning buildings and calling the snowplow to old ladies' houses, like,
that's
while
the thing
running
that I don't get.
City,
exactly.
Like, he's actually found.
You're running Newark. I mean, Newark is a city that is not without big problems.
He's got his hands full.
Right, and he's doing a startup.
Yeah, I don't know. As a mayor, he's incredibly impressive. And as a social media maven, he's also incredibly impressive. He just dominates on Twitter. People love him because he's out there getting his hands dirty.
He's a mensch.
Right? And he's a good guy, right?
I saw him speak at a Google event.
And he's not afraid to tweet about it.
Oh my God, he blew me away.
Right.
I was like, I would follow this guy anywhere.
But the startup connection, I mean, so what? He went to Stanford. He knows a lot of people who went to Stanford. A lot of people who went to Stanford are now running things in Silicon Valley. So, I mean, that's one of the advantages of going to Stanford.
Yeah, I think that the Times suddenly discovering this is a little overblown, personally. You know, is there influence peddling going on here? Maybe, but when isn't there? Waywire, actually, the idea of it was really interesting. A lot of people are trying to figure out, how do we do discovery of video on the internet, right? How do we do it? How do we navigate a path through all the things that are there? No one's really figured that out yet. Waywire, I don't think, has either. Yeah. But it was a worthy attempt.
Well, people are going to be banging on this problem for a while. I mean, people have been trying to solve this for at least 7 years that I know of.
Well, and let's face it, right? He's now in the running for Lautenberg's Senate seat in Jersey. So I think that election's coming up like next week or something, which is kind of why we discovered Waywire right before the election. But once he becomes a senator, if he does become a senator, I mean, he's going to have a lot of time to do startups. Because they don't really do anything as senators, right? Let's go on to our next story, which is a media story, which also is good versus evil, or evil versus evil, or good versus good, depending on what you want to call it. Time Warner Cable versus CBS. So we've seen a bunch of these happen over the last few years, where a cable company shuts out one of the broadcasters or somebody else because they can't agree on the rates. This is just the latest one. This one's going on a little bit longer.
This one is like this is like the Joker versus Doc Octopus. I mean, really, it's like who likes either of these guys?
The poor viewer. This is such an interesting argument to have right now because of what's going on with over the top and cord cutters and all the great things you can do without traditional cable. But this is so annoying because it just highlights how the cable companies are middlemen between you know, your screen and somebody making content, and then you've got these guys who are fighting it out, taking slices of revenue off the top base off of your overblown cable fees, and you're getting screwed.
Well, I would say, you could say poor viewers, and for the couch potato who's sitting there just staring at the screen,
if you're paying a cable bill, you're a poor viewer.
Poor you. I mean, you're wasting your money paying Time Warner for a show that you can't now get, right? But on the other hand, if you're a fan of Big Bang Theory, that's one of the CBS shows, right? If you're a fan of that, you can get it. You can go, online, and you can download it, or you can stream it from any number of places.
You can get it from BitTorrent because apparently Time Warner or CBS blocked online viewing of some of the shows in areas that where they're having the Time Warner.
Well, they
so
did.
you have to go the illegitimate route.
Yeah.
BitTorrent's quite easy to use now, and not that I would recommend people do illegal things, but let's face it. If you don't make it easy for them to watch, they're going to download it, and I think this will just push more people to online.
It's not even BitTorrent though, and this is where I think there's a really interesting aspect of this happening. CBS's biggest hit this summer, Under the Dome. Right? You guys heard it. It's really a really good show.
Is it good?
It's a good show, sci-fi show. You can watch it 4 days later on Amazon. You can either pay for it, or if you're part of Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. I actually have that up here right now, and you see it's Friday, August 9th, and you can see the August 5th episode is available to watch. It just went up today. The idea that after 3 days, and there's a thing in television that's called Prime Plus 3 or something like that, like the Plus C3. Which is the ratings on the day that it launches, and then within 3 days for DVR. That's how they determine a rating. That's C3. They're saying is after C3 is over, we're just going to make it available in other places. I'm sure that Time Warner cable is not a big fan of that. So even though that hasn't come up that much, I think this is part of it.
See, for me, I don't care. I mean, I watch everything through Amazon Prime or Hulu or Netflix occasionally. So for me, and I don't have water cooler conversations with people the next day about what happened on our favorite show the night before. So if I watch it a week later, no big deal. I'll catch it on Amazon Prime.
Well, yeah,
but that
if
recommendation.
The real challenge, though, is the companies that are producing this stuff. Despite the fact that I think consumers what consumers don't have is control over how much they pay and what's going on behind the scenes. They never have. But it's more and more possible now because you can go direct to the consumer with the internet. The challenge, though, is these shows, Under the Dome, Game of Thrones, whatever, they're unbelievably expensive to produce. And if we were to go straight to consumer a la carte, HBO would not be able to afford a show like Game of Thrones. So it's not like there is a magic solution here. These kind of things, I think, are inevitable until the kind of direct pay-per-view lines cross, which is probably years and years away.
Yeah, so the other interesting, and I agree with you, that Time Warner is saying to people in New York who can't get CBS, sign up for Aereo.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Aereo, I think it's $8 a month service that basically gives you a little antenna off there and somewhere else where you can get over the internet access to the broadcast nets as well as others. Which to me is it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. This guy at Time Warner says, go get Aereo, and Aereo is one of the things, if you get it and you like it and you use it, you may just turn off your Time Warner TV.
Which CBS sued.
Right.
I remember, because I was working at CBS when this whole thing happened. I mean, you
sued Aereo.
Right? Oh my God.
Oh yeah, totally.
It was a huge blow up.
So you can tell Time Warner saying, go get Aereo, right? Yeah, you can't get it. Go buy Aereo.
Yeah. Just because they want to
they're just
CBS
flaming. They just put gasoline on the fire and just spank a match. So you're talking about cord cutting, which I think is a really interesting thing to bring up. In traditional television, and I see this at Discovery, everyone says cord cutting isn't real, it's not happening, don't worry about it. Well, and I'm just going to bring this up because I was looking at Peter Kafka over at All Things D, wrote a story about how it used to be a myth, it's not anymore, and this is Craig Moffat, who's an analyst who looked at the most recent numbers for pay TV, and he found that they're down 360,000 subscribers over the last year. But it's not a lot, but they've been in decline for 3 consecutive quarters. And it's interesting to see that maybe this cord cutting thing is actually real.
It's just a question of making it easy for consumers and getting the content out there and making the water cooler conversations possible. I got somebody spoilered me on Breaking Bad, which I'm still catching up on the other day. I nearly, lost my...
Don't say anything. I haven't watched
I'm not going to say a word. But I will. No. Anyway,
No.
But so people do care. Time still does. I mean, watching a show when it comes out still does matter. And most cord cutting, time shifts you.
Yeah, you can't.
Or worse.
Right. That's right. You have to be somebody like me who doesn't really care that much about TV to be a happy cord cutter. And I am a cord cutter, but in the sense that I don't have a cable subscription, but I haven't paid for cable in years. So.
Or you could have Aereo, right? Aereo gives you access to the broadcast nets. When it's coming out, so you can find out. You can watch Under the Dome and talk about it.
Right.
Anyway, it's an interesting world to watch there. I also, and you brought up Game of Thrones, which is, remember, Time Warner Cable and Time Warner Television, who owns HBO, are different companies. But who's the head of Time Warner Television said, you know what? I like Game of Thrones piracy better than winning an Emmy.
You know what this is showing? The freemium model really does work.
Yeah.
Even in media.
Yeah, right. That people BitTorrent it all they want. It's actually good for us.
And then more and more people find out about it and do the paid version of it. Get HBO, so they don't have to deal with that.
I don't know, Dylan. Is he encouraging piracy here? What do you think?
It's as long as people are talking about you, it's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the philosophy. Is BitTorrent is sort of, I think they're looking at it as the necessary kind of part of their marketing, right? That it's just lost that they're going to have to write off.
Piracy is good.
And Rafe is right. I mean, if you make it easy enough to purchase something, I mean, this was Apple's genius in the iTunes music stores. You make it 99 cents, you make it super easy to click, and piracy ceases to become a big problem if it's easy enough buy something legitimately.
Right, which is what iTunes taught us for sure. Right, make it easy. I'll buy a song for 99 cents. I don't need to rip it off. Do you think this is the beginning, Rafe, of HBO breaking free of requiring a cable subscription to purchase, though?
I think it's inevitable, but I don't think it's going to be for a while yet. Like I said, I mean, you know that they're experimenting. You can tell that they're experimenting. You can see that they're making little entrees into this world. And there's a bunch of guys in a room with a bunch of spreadsheets saying, okay, when the profitability and expense lines cross, then we'll flip the switch. But until then, we got to make money.
We're making money hand over fist. We're going to keep doing that, right? I just want to talk a little bit about the Motorola X, the new phone from Motorola. I saw a lot of reviews this week. They gave out review copies. I think you guys got one, probably at VentureBeat, right?
Yeah, we did. We ran a review. Yep.
You ran your review. I've seen them everywhere. You work at a mobile software company, basically, now. Am I describing Evernote right? Mobile software. Would you call yourself mobile software?
If that's what you want to call it.
I don't know. You run on Android, so.
It's a software company.
It's a software company. Yeah, that's true. You're just a software company.
It runs everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you run on everything. No, it's fine.
Okay.
But what do you, Dylan, I'll start with you. What's your sense of the Motorola X? Is it a contender?
Yeah, it looks like a really good phone.
Yeah.
A really good phone. I think that there are a couple interesting things about this. One is the customizability of the shell. You know, the color sort of, you can get it in wood.
I know, wild,
you can get it in different
You can
colors.
get it in wood.
You can, actually.
My phone floats.
Which is kind of nice. I mean, I think people like that. That's not a huge feature, but it's made in the U.S., which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's a first for a smartphone. But I think the most intriguing thing about it is it's got this kind of always-on, you know, voice command kind of thing. So you can just talk to it.
Well, isn't that kind of creepy, Rafe? That's like this always-on thing that's in your pocket that's always listening. It's like Monsters, Inc. Always watching, Wisnowski. Always watching.
Is it creepy?
Yeah, I find it creepy to have a phone that's always
It's your
aware.
phone, though.
Yeah, of course it's creepy, but it's you know we're gonna walk into a room. It's gonna be like Star Trek. You know, computer raise lights. That's happening.
That's pretty much how this works.
Yeah, all right.
Well, I think it's amazing that they managed to make the processor and the battery be able to do that, so you don't have to turn it on.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is like, it's always on.
Yeah.
And now, when you think about what has been revealed because of, you know, through the Snowden leak about, you know, being able to turn on phones and listen to them even when the user doesn't think they're on, and this phone is actually always on, yes, it's totally creepy, but unbelievably cool, and I want one.
Okay, so you want one. So
sure.
you're like, oh, I'm there. Yeah, because like my phone, like this is like a 9-month-old phone, and do I really need to get another phone? I guess I do, huh?
Yeah.
I think that's a law of buying phones. You know, the contract is always twice as long as the period. You know.
Well, I bought this outright. I don't want a contract. I'm T-Mobile, and I like T-Mobile. Buy it outright. Be on there. Buy used phones if you need to.
Do you have that new plan where you can
switch
it every?
I'm saving
every
like
few months?
no. I have the plan where I don't pay for the phone at all.
Okay.
And I'm saving like $25 a month because I don't have to because I'm not subsidizing my phone purchase.
Yeah. Going back to the Moto X for a minute, I think one of the things that's interesting about the Moto X is it's, from a hardware perspective, it is not a breakthrough. It's
interesting.
It's not a high-powered processor.
That's true.
There's nothing really amazing about the specs that the user sees aside from the battery life. What Motorola is really fixated on was the integration and the features and a small number of core features as opposed to some other phones which are everything kitchen sink of features. So it's really a return to, I'm not going to say it's, you know, Apple level of simplicity and integration, but they're definitely driving towards a couple of key features that you will actually use, not just a bunch of Microsoft Word like check off
Right, exactly. A lot of crapware. The crapware is gone.
You know, I think maybe that's Google's been doing this in their Nexus phones too, where they're sort of like, let's strip out all the crap and show you what an Android phone really could be if it wasn't, you know, covered in stuff that. Right.
I like my Nexus 4.
Yeah, so there you go.
I agree. What about some of the other folks who were talking about phones this week? LG is the G2 coming out. Is LG even relevant? LG actually makes this Nexus 4, but are they relevant?
You know, I hear it has a volume button on the back.
Yeah, that's right. The buttons are on the back, not on the side.
I haven't played with that one, but
isn't it weird that
you sit down and it's in your pocket and the volume goes up?
Yeah, isn't it weird that like we talk about innovations in phones, they put the button on the back. And that's an innovation that gets us all excited. That's kind of sad, actually. I have another mobile story that's really interesting. It kind of gets back to the whole government thing we were talking about earlier. Obama overturning the ban on Apple products that went out as some patent bans. Really interesting. Talk about the story, Dylan. Give me a sense of what this really means.
Well, first of all, it surprised me because, as we all know, Obama is a BlackBerry fan.
Right. That's a Canadian phone. Come on.
Exactly. More seriously, I don't know why he overturned this. It's a very rare thing to do. Apparently, no president since 1987 has overturned an import ban like this. So clearly, there was some significant motivation to do this. Probably there's a little bit of influence peddling going on with Apple, but I don't know what the exact rationale is for it. It's a huge win for Apple, though, because I mean, obviously, if they can't import iPhones and iPads into the U.S., the huge portion of their business is just gone. So
absolutely, but Rafe, I'm worried this is going to be the beginning of a trade war.
The beginning of a trade war.
Yeah. All right. Or is it the end of a trade war?
No, we're smack in the middle of this thing. And
okay, it'll just make things worse. That's what I meant.
It will make things worse. The lawyers will get filthy rich, as they have been. The patent system, it highlights that how messed up the patent system still is, even after the recent overhaul.
Yeah, it's broken, right?
Yeah. That's why LG put the volume on the back, because that was the one unpatented space. Nobody patented the back yet.
But how's the U.S.'s perception of being, protecting IP anyway? We've gotten all upset about China stealing IP from lots of companies. Does this put us in? Do we become seen as just bad IP protectors also here in the U.S. because of this?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think the U.S. has an incredibly IP-friendly climate, and I think people around the world recognize that. And for the most part, we're very good about enforcing that overseas. I don't know. Are we patent trolls as a result of that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there is a contingent of people, and I'm among them, but we're admittedly the fringe, who believe that IP law is just way too expansive. Yeah. That patent periods should be shorter. The patent office should have some clue what it's doing before it approves a patent. Copyrights should be a lot shorter. But honestly, is that a majority opinion? No, most people don't.
And you say you're on the fringe for that, huh?
Yeah.
What do you think, Rafe? Patents, good or bad?
The way they are now, not really so good. In the nuclear arms race of giant companies that are just basically patent litigation outfits, it does not do anybody any good.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the whole Samsung versus Apple? Because this just seems like another salvo of Samsung versus Apple in the way that they're trying to one-up each other in the patent court. They're trying to. It's a really interesting war. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it actually turned out that one of the patents that Apple won the court case for a year ago against Samsung was the pinch to zoom patent.
Right.
That patent was actually invalidated. It turned out that that's not a legitimate patent, and after they investigated it, the patent office was like, well, we didn't really, this isn't a valid patent because there's a lot of prior art or whatever. Yeah. Samsung is now going through the courts to try and say, hey, can we reverse that part of the decision because it was in Apple's favor on the basis of a patent that didn't really exist. It's going to go on forever.
It's like as Rafe says, it's the lawyers who are getting rich on all this. Yeah. And we are paying for it with higher costs on our phones.
And features that you would like to have but aren't there.
Can't have, right, exactly. Yeah. Or they have to do these crazy workarounds on. What phone do you have?
iPhone 5.
iPhone?
iPhone 4S.
Okay. So you guys have.
I switch back and forth between. I said this on the last time I was.
Right. Yeah.
I use all kinds of different.
You kind of have to in your position.
The 4S is the latest.
So let's move on to a somewhat more fascinating, interesting, and entertaining story about eye licking. I just wanted to say eye licking.
I got my shields on right here. You try, just try to lick.
We're all like this right now.
You guys have glasses on, so you're protected. I got contacts on. Don't lick my eyes. This is actually a story turned out to be a hoax. Can you believe it? A hoax on the internet.
Shocking.
So, but think about it. The story comes out, people cover it, other people cover it, just goes on and on. I mean, Dylan, you run a legitimate news organization. What happens to you when you see these bizarre stories come out? How do you make sure you don't get pulled into the latest eye licking hoax?
Thank God, VentureBeat's business is not covering the bizarre antics of Japanese school kids, because I would have a really hard time telling, actually. A lot of weird stuff happens in Japan.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how to vet that. I mean, honestly, you look at something that's on the internet, and your first question as a journalist has to be like, does this make sense?
Right.
And if it makes sense, and I'm considering reporting on it, who do I call, or who can I email, or how can I fact check this? And if you can't fact check it, then you have to be very cautious about what you report and say, reportedly, you know, we haven't been able to verify this. But, you know, I think, I don't want to say I've never been taken in by this, because I think we've all spotted things and thought that stories were legitimate that turned out not to be legitimate. But, you know, honestly, I think you use a little common sense, you can avoid a lot of really embarrassing mistakes.
Yeah, Rafe, when you were at CNET, what would you guys do to keep yourselves from getting suckered in by some of this stuff?
Oh man, well, I think it's happened to all of us,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right.
I mean, I remember I got sucked into something once and I should have known better.
Oh really? Well,
Yeah.
come on, tell us. Come on, share.
It was a couple of years ago at CES, a guy showed me I forget what it was, but it was some device that it was a multi-spectrum radio thing, and you plugged it into your USB, and it basically was super duper long range Wi-Fi and cellular. And it was actually, and I was thinking to myself as I was sitting down talking to this guy, that looks an awful lot like an RSA key. It just looks, but okay. And as it turns out, it was total fraud, and it actually was an RSA key with the logo scraped off of it.
Oh my gosh.
But you want to believe in,
Right.
and right now in journalism, there's such a high value placed on timeliness that you end up doing this thing that TechCrunch called process journalism,
Right.
which means it may be completely wrong. We'll correct it as we go.
We're just going to put it up, and if it's wrong, we'll correct it.
Fact-checking after the fact, or fact-checking.
Crowdsourcing fact checking.
Exactly.
Crowdsourced fact checking,
Yes,
right.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that the pace at which internet journalism moves right now is so fast that happens a lot, and you're always in fear of kind of missing the next big story. So you have to do a constant balancing act. You know, are we going to be super fast and maybe not correct, or are we going to be a little bit slower and maybe correct, or can we find ways to do both?
What do you guys do at VentureBeat?
We're a little more on the let's be cautious and make sure we get the facts right side. So we may not always be first, although we certainly try to be, and we try to be competitive. And I think the way to do that is to find stories that other people haven't covered.
Right, exactly.
But you know, sometimes there are stories that people want to know about, that our readers want to know about. So then we just have to be careful.
Yep,
and that's our approach.
And the other thing is, you know, the story came out, and there's a lot of back and forth about, oh, the internet, it's terrible, it causes these things to happen, and you know, these stories can run around. But you know, these urban legends have been around for a long time. I have a cover of a book that I love this book. And I think I read it before the internet came out, called The Choking Doberman, which was one of those urban legends about the finger and the Doberman, and he was choking on it. It was not true. And this guy actually...
oh my God, that story's not true?
But these sorts of urban legends have been out there and debunked over and over and over again. Maybe the internet just makes it faster.
Yeah.
Just runs around a little bit more.
Makes life so much more interesting.
Eye licking. All right, we're going to move into a little bit of a lightning round. I got a bunch of stories I just want to talk about real quickly. First of all, there's this startup Keyme, right? So these guys will scan your house keys and your car keys and put them up on the internet, so that if you lose your keys, all you got to do is go over and just go boop, 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 and they'll print out a new key at the hardware store. Is this a good idea, Rafe?
No, but it's going to happen. But at least is now it's out in the open. I mean, because I've read about, you know, things where, you know, you take a picture of somebody's keys, it's just sitting on the desk, and then you can go print it out.
Wow.
I was about to order a Lockatron until the internet door key.
Yeah, right.
Until I read the reports out of DEF CON.
That you could hack it right in?
It's like, no more. Yeah.
Okay. What about you? What do you think about
Everything's
Keyme?
hackable. Every lock is pickable. I don't know. It seems convenient.
Well, shouldn't we go to, like, you know, fingerprint locks or retinal locks or things like that?
Minority Report.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, Minority Report. Okay, Yahoo logo. Dylan, have you seen any of the new Yahoo logos?
You know, it's hard for me to express an opinion on a logo, because what difference does it make? They're still going to be Yahoo. It's going to be purple. It's going to have an exclamation point. It's good enough for me.
What do you think, Rafe?
I don't really care.
Is this like?
Can I be honest?
Changing a logo is kind of, it's like one of the, I think it's a distracting thing, right? It's like, we're going to change our logo. Are they distracting people from something else? Like maybe, yeah, it's something over here. Like, what's really going on? What's really going on is we have no media business anymore. Or maybe they do, but.
They're doing actually better than they have in a long time.
They are. Marissa's doing a good job over there, but it's less of a media company and more of a technology company, right?
Yes, it's morphing, it's changing.
Neither of you guys ever worked at Yahoo, right?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, that's why he's saying nice things.
Never will now.
The Richie's acquiring things. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, that's true. We could all be working there. Yeah. YouTube founders back with a new company called Mixbit. Do you buy the Mixbit, Rafe?
I tried it because.
Yeah, what do you think?
I found it has more features than Vine or Instagram instant videos, but it's harder to use. That's my consumer review.
Who's using these quick little thingies? I mean, what do you think?
My daughter. My 12-year-old daughter
Yep.
is using Vine. Yeah, Instagram.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I have no time for this kind of stuff. Really short videos. It's just they're all really poor quality and annoying to me.
There's to say, create videos together is what it says on their website right now, in case you want to see it. I guess, it's just another way to create videos and post them up. I think we give it more credence because it comes from the guys from YouTube, right? And they did a good job with YouTube apparently, and we'll see how this one goes. But a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting space, the long photo space or the super short video space. Yeah. I don't know if it's ever going to be like a thing, but if it is, it's going to be, my kid, your kid.
Look at the long photo space. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last one. Google lending out 79 patents. We're talking about patent stuff as well. Dylan, do you think this is a good idea for them to lend their patents out? What happens when you lend it out? Do they take them back every time?
Yeah,
like a library card? What's the deal
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
Google has been a long-time supporter of open source stuff. They've done a lot of open source projects. They've contributed a lot back to the open source community. So I'm in favor of this. Great. Thank you, Google.
That's awesome. What do you think, Rafe?
It's not so much an open source thing. It's like Google has all these patents. These are IBM patents that we're talking about today. That they're saying these patents are available to everybody if you're doing, I guess, open source stuff, and we will protect you if you use these patents. So it's a gift to the developer world saying these patents are safe.
Good on you. Go use it. So it's good. It's nice to see some good news happening in the patent world. That is all the time we have for this episode. Thank you very much, Rafe Needleman. Great to have you here. Dylan Tweney, great to have you here as well.
It's been fun.
Thanks for joining me. Any questions, comments, suggestions, you know what to do down there in the YouTube comments or wherever you find a comment box. And until next time, you've been watching Downloaded.
Charitably.
Something fell out of my back pocket. I just want you to know that. You guys talk amongst yourself while I get it.